Tonight we're going to be talking about Mary, Mother of Jesus. But first, that's interesting. So I wanted to see if any of you had any comments that you'd like to make from the last 2 weeks of discussions about Eve and Hagar, whether any of those discussions have stirred up anything in you. So I'd love to hear from any of you who care to share about that.
Well, I guess I can only speak of Hagar, but I really feel that by the discussion with everyone and Linda's great presentation, that I was able to equate something from way back in Bible times to what's happening today in certain aspects of our society. And I learned more about Hagar, greater details than I'd known before. So I thought that was very useful.
Great. Great, thank you. Any others?
Yes, I thought that it gave me a better sense that many other people thought about Eve and women in the Bible as women of agency, not simply women who received or women who were add-ons or women who just happened to be there. I had commented last week on Hagar. It was interesting. We were asked in art class to draw, to paint an escaping slave with her baby. And a Jewish friend in the class said, "Oh, it's like Hagar." And so I went to read. And I was fascinated because I had not, at first, reading or listening, realized that Hagar was a slave. And of course, slavery is very close to your historical reality. So that was very interesting. And so it was interesting now to come away from, 50 years ago, my interest in Hagar and the fact that she was a slave and found herself in those situations like so many other women who were enslaved. And also the idea that she was a princess, because then you wondered about where other people had come from and been seized from. So it was interesting. I now have a whole new dimension of thought, and I have to go back and think about. I wish I still had that painting, but.
Thank you. Yeah. Any others?
I thought it was interesting that both Hagar and Sarah were both the leaders of a kind and servants of a kind, and also the idea of Hagar's baby being part of the family, sort of adopted into the family. As somebody who became a mother through adoption, I found that really interesting, especially because of the way that the society worked, whereas if you were born into that family, regardless of whether you were born to the matriarch of the family, you were considered part of that family. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
I mentioned last week, and I still think that Abraham got away with an awful lot when it came to these two women. So
He was one of the patriarchs. What can you say?
it was a sign of the times as much as anything.
Well, and hopefully we're growing out of those, but I don't know. Who knows? Y'all can comment about that better than I can. So
I thought it was interesting, the point that was made. I'd never thought of it before, but the two handmaids of Jacob, all those wives, their handmaids became their descendants became part of the 12 tribes, as much as the children of the wives. And so why didn't that happen in Abraham?
Yeah, no, it's true that there was something about the Hammurabic law, that one condition of the law was met, but the second wasn't. So I'm not, I'd have to look in my notes, but both things needed to be fulfilled for Ishmael to be a full inheritor. It might have had to do with the agreements among the adults. I may be wrong. I may be not remembering that correctly, but
Well, and in the passage of time, customs change. What was fine in Abraham's time might not have been fine later on.
yeah, good point.
Any others? Well, then let's move on to, and if anything comes up, during the evening, of course, please, just let us know. But why don't we move on to the next thing? And so when you think of Mary, mother of Jesus, what do you think of? Now, there are more stories in Scripture or in the Bible about Mary, but depending on which gospel you're reading, the stories vary. So, and I'm sure there, and I guess the other thing to note is that in the Catholic Church, Mary has become extremely important over time, and I guess her star has waxed and waned as time goes by, to the extent that in 2017, National Geographic, of all things, named Mary as the most powerful woman in the world. And I haven't gone through to read all of the things that they cite for that, but a lot of it has to do with sightings of Mary, healings attributed to Mary. I mean, all sorts of things like that. So, but when you think of Mary, what do you think of?
My instinctive reaction is that she put all needs before her own.
Okay, thanks. Any others?
I think she's been underwritten. She's very pale. You don't really see her. You can almost see through her. And maybe I thought that was why she was that popular, because you could put anything onto her that you wanted.
Oh.
I know that I never wanted to be a woman like Mary. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but that's how I felt.
Understandable. Yeah.
I think
Any
she was
others? Yeah.
a very brave woman. She took on all sorts of things that could have really been very dangerous for her. And she stuck by her son under very strange times right till the end.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thanks.
I think she was fortunate with the mate that she picked as well. He was very brave too.
That is true. Any others?
I have a foot sort of in both camps, because I became an Anglican when I was 11, but from the years 1 to 10, I was a Roman Catholic. So I've absorbed a good deal of the old time folk religion, although I, would question it now, but occasionally images from childhood learning do pop up in one's mind.
Absolutely, they do. I have found that to my dismay often. But then I grew a Baptist, so I mean, what can I say? So.
Would Mary join the Baptists at any time?
Mm-hmm.
Was Mary part of the Baptists too?
No, Mary was seen as one of those Catholic things, and Baptists and Catholics, I think, are almost the same because they believe that there's almost no salvation apart from either one of the churches.
Mhm.
You know, unfortunately, you have to pick which one you have to go to, but
Mhm.
and I could be wrong, of course, but Mary, you know, did not come off well in the Baptist church because she was associated with Catholicism.
That's what.
If
I
that
always
makes any sense. I don't know if it makes any sense, but that's what I always got. So
I always felt sorry for Mary because I thought, you know, she accepted whatever it was that God asked her to do when she was just a child, really. And her whole life then was focused around this this son who was getting himself into all kinds of trouble, and she was always kind of dragged along to be there to help him out when he needed it. And I just thought she had a very difficult and kind of sad life. And perhaps knowing that he was so special would have lifted her up. But to watch your son die in a horrible way, I just can't imagine there'd be much to make that feel like it was okay. So yeah, I always felt, and I'd been a Catholic until 4 years ago, and I always felt sorry for poor old Mary.
very interesting. I think
We know almost nothing about her life from, well, when the nativity thing finishes until after the crucifixion. There's really nothing in between. She may have had a very happy life. We don't know.
That is true. That is true. Yeah.
Well, she had a son who could turn water into wine, so that can't be too bad.
Well, she knew how to entertain, clearly.
But did he do it?
How many women today would really want to be married?
Not me.
Not me.
Not at all.
Well, actually, there are going to be some poems that we'll look at that are going to treat with that theme, I think. So not necessarily for only women, but for any of us. So why don't we get into this? There are a whole bunch of one thing that I would say is that when we get to the stories of Mary in the Bible, we're gonna find a number of different things that she is associated with, but poets and artists have not given equal weight to all of those different events. So if you've been to the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, and I'm sure many other museums, you're going to find lots of paintings and sculptures about the Annunciation, when the angel Gabriel, came to Mary and said, "Hey, you're going to have this Jesus, as your baby. God has chosen you." And then we're going to find that that there are any number of sculptures, particularly for Mary and Jesus at the cross. But some of the other stories don't get the same play. So for example, in the Gospel of Mark, which as you know, doesn't have an infancy narrative, the stories basically are the family of Jesus visit him and accuse him of being crazy. And it's at that point that he's asked, "Well, your mother is here." Or he's told, "Well, your mother is here, and your brothers and sisters." And he says, "Well, whoever believes in me are my brothers and sisters and my mother." Mary was also in the crowd, or in the part where he's rejected at Nazareth, where he says some things that get the crowds all upset, and they nearly throw him off the cliff, but somehow he mysteriously evades them. And then, of course, Mary was one of the women at the cross in the Gospel of Mark. So that's where you find out about Mary. But in the Gospel of Luke, you're going to find lots more things. You're going to find the Annunciation, which we're going to look at a good bit tonight. You're going to find Mary visiting her cousin Elizabeth. Elizabeth was going to be the mother of John the Baptist. And Mary and Elizabeth Elizabeth was very advanced in age, but yet was having a son nevertheless, and Mary visited her. You also find the birth of Mary's son, Jesus, and the whole infancy narrative in Luke. You get the story of Mary taking Jesus to the temple to be presented when he was, what, 8 days old. Then you have the story where Mary and Joseph lose Jesus during a visit to Jerusalem, where he's spending his time in the temple, you know, talking with the rabbis and scribes and all of those folks. And then you get the same story. Jesus is rejected at Nazareth, and then finally the family of Jesus visited him during his ministry. So you find all those stories in Luke. Matthew has a number of the same infancy stories, but you're going to find that Matthew tends to look at Joseph rather than Mary. And so the emphasis is on, well, what was Joseph doing, and what was God telling Joseph to do with regard to Mary, and so forth. And then finally, in the Gospel of John, you get the wedding at Cana, where Jesus turned the water into wine at Mary's behest. And then you're going to get Mary witnessing the crucifixion of her son. So you get a sense of, you know, her involvement. But as some of you already said, we don't have any idea about her, you know, her interior state, you know, or other things about her life or marriage or anything like that. So that's not important as far as the gospel writers are concerned. So any thoughts about any of that before we get into a few pieces of art?
I think in John also, she is known as the mother of Jesus. I don't think she's actually named Mary in John's gospel. Because at the wedding, the mother of Jesus was there.
Right. I think you're right. But I think part of it too also depends on the translation that you're using. I guess some translators just say, oh, well, let's just call her Mary because then we know what her name is. So
yeah, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and who was at the cross depends on which gospel you're looking at, because there's a little bit of a variation in who was there. But as I say, for most poets and artists, it doesn't seem, well, for poets particularly, the business about at the cross doesn't seem to be something that they've decided to focus on for whatever reason. So maybe we'll look at that and see why as we go through this tonight. Any other thoughts?
About the genealogies, I can't put my hand on it right now, but in one of the genealogies for Jesus, Mary is the focus. And in another one, it's Joseph.
Right. So I would assume that Luke is the one where Mary is the focus, and Joseph is the one in Matthew. So
I have to.
That's right.
Yeah.
I have to look that.
Yeah. But I think that's right. So yeah, thanks. Thanks, London. Any others?
Actually, yeah, what I have here is that when Matthew records Jesus's genealogy, he traces it back through his mother's line in deference to the doctrine with the one whose son Jesus was of God. But when Luke records it, on the other hand, although he was no less a true believer, he makes no bones about listing Joseph as the father of Jesus and tracing the line back through him. So that's exactly the opposite.
Exactly, yeah.
Of what we would expect, because Luke's gospel has a tendency to give women more of the stage.
Right.
So I just have to check that out, though. That was written by Fred Buechner. So.
Well, he's pretty reliable guy. So.
I want to go to the source. Anyway, yeah. Whatever.
Okay.
Wasn't Judaism matrilineal though?
Sorry?
Wasn't Judaism matrilineal? Like you would trace through the mother?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that seems contradictory.
Yeah. Welcome to the Bible. Yeah.
I don't recall that the genealogy is traced to the mother. The faith is passed down on the mother's side, but the genealogy always seemed to be on the father's side.
I disagree. I disagree.
Well, we'll look it up. That's one of the things about
Look it up.
about classes like this is that there are always new research projects to be thinking about, and I don't know the answer to that. So but I have high respect for everybody who has an opinion here. So since there seems to be a difference of opinion, we'll look it up. But not now. I won't look it up right now. We'll move on to some artwork. And what I've tried to do is to put this chronologically, sort of anyway. And so this first painting is from Fra Angelico. It's in the Prado, and it was around the early 15th century. And one thing I want to draw your attention to is the little side piece on the left, which is a feature of Adam and Eve being expelled from the garden with the cherubim with flaming sword, although I don't see the flaming sword, but I guess it's there, guarding the gates to the Garden of Eden as Adam and Eve are leaving. Adam and Eve being expelled here look quite different than in some of the paintings we looked at a couple of weeks ago, but that's not really the point. The point from Fra Angelico is that what he wanted to do was to represent both damnation and salvation, the growth or the activity of God in the world. And since humans had gotten themselves thrown out through Eve's disobedience or Adam's disobedience or both or whatever, and we've talked about that, now we have the means where God is going to save the world. And you can see up in the upper left-hand corner the hand of God, I suppose, coming out of the sun or whatever the light object is, and illuminating Mary. So at the bottom of the screen or the bottom of the painting, you can see several scenes from the life of Mary. One, her birth, which of course we know nothing about. But the artist, certainly was capable of making up something. The second one was her visit to Elizabeth, mother of John the Baptist, or John the Baptizer, I'm not sure which one, lest there be any confusion about that. And then the birth of the Christ child in the middle, the presentation, and the dormition of the Virgin with Christ receiving her soul. And since I did not grow up Catholic, I had to look up what dormition of the Virgin was, because it didn't seem to be in the Bible anywhere. And so it is a doctrine of the Catholic Church about how she fell asleep and then was received into heaven. At least I believe that's right. And if any of you can correct me, I will be more than happy to be corrected. But anyway, those are the scenes that Fra Angelico deemed to be important. And so we're going to look, but you can see already some of the traditional elements of the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel on the left, Mary on the right. You can see the different clothing. One thing you can see in Mary's lap is a book, because she is, at least traditionally, is associated with studying and reading. And you also see the halos around both figures. You don't see that around Adam and Eve, but you do see it around Mary and the angel. And you also see the place where this occurs would appear to be in Mary's home. At least that's the most likely place where this particular scene would be. Any other thoughts? And as we go through this, you'll see that other artists have interpreted all of these different points quite differently. So any thoughts about this?
I see a dove above Gabriel
Okay.
on that wing. I don't know what significance that might have, but or is that part of?
Yeah, you'll be conceived by the Holy Spirit. So traditionally that bird is the vehicle for the Spirit.
Right.
But there's another bird there.
Yeah.
Somehow I don't see Mary living in surroundings that were that elegant or dressed as elegantly as she is there.
Or a blonde.
Or
And Adam and Eve are blondes too. Holy cow.
Or having a little circlet, a little diadem on her hair or on her head. So the artists have taken license with this, but the reason why, let's see, now one thing, tell me if you see a lily anywhere, and then I want to come back to Linda's point about the second bird. I don't see a lily. Typically, lilies are associated with Mary with her purity or her virginity. Linda, can you comment about the other bird you see?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
I don't know what that symbolizes. And then you've got that other sculpted figure in the center medallion of the canopy. So it must have had something to do with what the artist had received. I don't know.
Yeah, because the guy in the middle seems to be kind of looking over at Mary and trying to, I don't know, figure out what's going on. And I thought the little bird was the one who was with a little songbird coming to tell her, whereas the dove hands from God is, as you said, the Holy Spirit. So that wouldn't be the one that she would hear. She would hear this little songbird and the dove. The guy in the middle, quite askance at whatever's going on. Doesn't seem breathing.
Giotto's Annunciation, Gabriel has a lily or Mary has a lily. I think others, use different.
Most of them are going to have a lily, but this one does not. But again, this one is relatively early in the process. So let's go to the next one. The next one is 60 years later, a little over 60 years later, and this is by Botticelli. This piece is in the Uffizi in Florence. And with your permission, what I'm going to do, if this will work, is I'm not going to hit Control L, but I'm going to hit Control C because that's what we do here for Windows anyway, or at least I think. So let me see if this will work. This is about a 5-minute little explanation.
Nothing.
Joe, do you have it? Because we don't.
Oh.
No, we don't.
we don't have it.
Well, then let's don't worry about it. I do
Actually,
not.
Joe,
Yes.
often when you click on a video like this, you actually have to stop sharing the screen of the PowerPoint and then select another frame, which is where the video is actually running.
Can you walk me through that, Michael? Or I can stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Okay.
And then right away, click share screen again. And one of your choices should be the YouTube or whatever it is of the video.
All us polite Canadians just sitting here silently.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm so
Except for
glad you
Linda.
said something.
We'd be here
Except
for
for Linda,
hours.
who was like, hey, Joe, we're not getting this.
5-minute
Linda.
meditation.
Well, he's
maybe-
looking for that. I just wanted to bring up one other thing. I mean, the names of Mary's parents are known and carried in a different tradition, but were incorporated into lesser feasts and fasts or holy men and women, or whatever you want to call the daily commemorations of the saints. So there's this whole story about Joachim and Anna, her parents' names, who took her to the temple when she was a child. So anyway, I'll just,
There it is.
Oh my gosh.
good.
Can you hear that?
Not yet.
Nothing?
No.
Okay.
Coming, it's coming.
Oh, is it?
Well,
And you may need to up the volume on either directly on the YouTube or on your computer.
Anything?
No.
Not yet.
Would you just click in the middle of the video and see if, no, okay. What I was trying to see is if the volume pops up down at the bottom
On the
left.
left.
And it's
Yeah.
all the way.
Muted.
right up.
Oh,
Well, I'm not going to worry about it because apparently I don't know how to get it to work. So I apologize for that.
okay, so we
Um,
can take down the info though and do it.
Well, what we can do is, if you're interested, there are any number of little videos like this that discuss these things, and this will give you one of them. And if you're really interested, then it'll be available. So and it's worth doing because the people that did the little videos are both from a church and seem to be pretty knowledgeable about art. So let me not worry about that, but I'll comment about a few things.
Lost 70 pounds. I've lost 97 pounds with you. I lost
Oh,
92
no.
pounds.
I'm a stressy.
Welcome to Art Fragment. On this
Got the Biggest Loser.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that you'll notice is that Mary is in a quite different posture than she was in the earlier, in the other video. You can see that she's just in a completely different posture. She's turning. You'll see that they're in a different architectural space. They perhaps are not in Mary's bedroom anymore. They may be in a different location. You see that the angel is in a posture more of supplication. Both of them are elaborately gowned. They both have their halos. The angel is carrying the lily right here. And you can see that the artist has framed this in two architectural spaces. The room is divided by this window. You can also see the posture of the hands. You may remember Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, the creation of Adam, where they're touching. Well, here the angel is in a position, is in a posture of blessing, and Mary is, well, how would you describe the way her hands are held in this? Is it, well, I'm not so sure about this, or is it some other thing?
Wait a minute.
I think she's hesitant. She's not pushing away, but she's not receiving. She's saying, you know, wait a minute, what is this?
Yep, I think that's right. I think that's right. You can also see, just for what it's worth, that Mary has been at a lectern, so presumably her book is on the lectern, so she's been in the process of reading. So, any other comments about the Botticelli?
It only reminds me of the scene in the Resurrection Garden. Kind of noli me tangere, don't touch me. I get the sense that she's like, don't touch me. No, but I don't know why that came to mind, but she certainly seems to be establishing some distance.
Yeah, I think that's right. Now you also, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say boundaries.
Ah, yes. So the boundaries are established here. I mean, there's no touching, no nothing like that. You also don't see a dove, I don't think, in this piece.
Get a sense of movement, as if there's wind or air, maybe spirit moving in the way the clothes are, in the way it's captured in a moment, but it was moving.
Yeah, could well be.
Some transparency of some sort that's below the wings and on the back and actually extends to the front of the angel. So I don't know what that is all about, but it's really remarkably achieved.
Yeah.
It's almost like invisible sheer, but even look at Mary. I mean, she has something like that, a sheer draped over her as well.
Well, let's move on to the next one, because we've got several different examples here. I'm not going to read, or I'm not going to do this poem, but what has been interesting to me is that there are any number of poems that comment or are poems about the paintings. And I think it was Dorian that was talking about the hesitancy of Mary. That is kind of the focus of this poem. If you look at the next to the last stanza of the angel's robe, but her whole body pulls away, only her head, already haloed, bows, acquiescing. And though she will, she's not yet said, behold, I'm the handmaiden of the Lord, as Botticelli in his great pity lets her refuse, accept, refuse, and think again. So if you're interested in the poetry, and I suspect you are, you know, you might want to read this one more or a little bit again as you go through this, or as you look at the slides later on. I hope you will. Okay, so the next painting is Leonardo da Vinci. This is actually a few years before the Botticelli. It's 1472. It's also in the Uffizi. So like I say, if you go to the Uffizi, you just go through rooms and rooms of Annunciations. You kind of say, wow, this is amazing. But you see the space is quite different. Here, Mary and the angel are in a garden. And you can see that the garden is looking out over a a mountain and a seaport, all of this stuff. It's at twilight because the trees are darker. If you look at, I'm sorry, if you look at the ground cover, all of these flowers are, if you look at them carefully, they're all different. Every one of these is, you know, beautifully painted as a naturalist painter would paint. You also see that you see the same kind of conventions that you might see. You see Mary at her desk. You see the angel carrying the lily. You see them both with halos. But other than that, they're both very, very natural. And that's the point of this. In fact, you can see that the angel is so natural, it's got a shadow.
The hand raised in blessing. It's a traditional
Right.
kind
Yes.
of priestly blessing.
Any other comments or notes about this painting?
There
Well-
doesn't seem to be any emotion, unlike the Botticelli, where you could really get a sense that Mary was kind of struggling with something and the angel was really trying to draw her into the decision. Here, it's very static, to me at least, and I don't really see that there's a lot of decision making happening. It's just really a tableau.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And these paintings were done at a time when young noble women probably were being taught to read. But would a young Jewish girl in Jesus's time have been reading?
Probably not. Probably not. I don't know, Linda. You could correct me if I'm wrong, if you know. But I will say that this is just
Education of the faith was always done at home until they reached the age to go to synagogue, and then of course the women were then excluded. At early first century Palestine kind of thing, but we need to go to Amy Gio Levine to find out a little bit more about that, because she says that
I don't think these artists were thinking about Palestine at all. I think they're thinking about Italy and making it fit Italy. They probably had never been to Palestine.
Well, and it's a remarkable theological assumption, isn't it, that the message to bear Christ comes within every culture and every time zone, within every people. And I was thinking also about something Joe said earlier, about how all of the characters that we're going to be discussing over the period of these classes, all of them have their lives defined by others. And Mary is certainly one whose life was defined by her son.
I think that is what makes it powerful. Somebody like William Corellic, who has the nativity happening in a little gas station in the country. It hits you with a punch when it's within your own culture and setting. Yes, Jesus could be born here. So I think it's important that for the artist, it is Italy. It's saying Jesus is born for us.
That's a great point. And we're going to see a few more of those, about this topic in just a little bit. But yeah, Linda, you were going to say?
No, I was just going to say we can connect people with Corellic's work. He is most famous for that Prairie Christmas book. There a prairie nativity. Anyway, he's from Saskatchewan, Patricia, right. Is that right? His tableaus, he puts the Holy Family everywhere in the Canadian landscape. And
Manitoba, I
mostly,
think it is.
yeah, it's really, so we can get that link for people.
Mhm.
That's great. And is that Karelik? Is that the
K-U-R.
you are? Okay.
E-L-E-K. He's Ukrainian. I'll find a copy of the book. I'll be back.
That'd be good. It's,
Well-
again, I didn't know about him, but every Canadian knew about him.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so,
I think that's great. And we're gonna see how this story has been treated in exactly that way by so many different people. So, but first, and maybe we won't spend that much time on this one. This one is the Jan van Eyck piece at the National Gallery of Art. This is, just to give you a little bit better idea of what the two main figures look like, is Mary and Gabriel. And if you want some fancy royal dress, the angel certainly shows up, but the theory, or the theology at least, is that the angel is a representative of royalty and wealth, and has something very important to say, and needs to look the part. You'll also note the angel's wings. And the wings are peacock or rainbow colored, with peacock eyes drawn into them. And peacocks were at that time noted for their association with royalty. Mary, on the other hand, is wearing the color blue because, well, one, that's the typical color that's associated with Mary, but it's also the color of divinity, according to the pieces that I've seen, and the color of the heavens, but it's also the color of the cloth laid over the Ark of the Covenant by the Jews. And in this painting, the theology of the art of the artist is to show very definitely how this scene is the pivotal bridge between Old and New Testament, old and new things. And so you can see that a lot of different ways. You can see it in the windows that are just a few little examples. The windows in the upper part of the church are Romanesque windows, which was at that time an old style of architecture. Whereas in the lower part of the church, the windows are Gothic windows, which was the new style of architecture at that time. Some of the scenes that are depicted on the floor are from the Old Testament, but they proceed as you get closer to the front to more New Testament type scenes. You also see the first thing that's highlighted, I was drawing the little cursor over here, is the dove, which is coming down to represent the Holy Spirit. And you'll see that the light that's coming in from the windows at the top of the church, there are actually 7 golden rays, and the dove is coming down on the 7 golden rays. The artist has done a wonderful job of just technologically in this painting. The detail is remarkable. But in this poem, which is a description or a comment on this painting, we'll look at, let me just note one other thing, and that is, if you look, there are words that are coming out of the angel's mouth, and this is, my Latin is not very good, but I believe that this is, Hail Mary, full of grace, something to that effect. but the words from Mary's mouth are upside down. But it's behold the handmaiden of the Lord, and so the artist is trying to say what she's doing is speaking so that God can see her, and of course, you know, the old cosmology of heaven being up there and God being up there is consistent with this, you know, style of painting. So would anybody like to read this poem just real quick? Well, I'll read it real quick. Take a world in which each flowers an Easter lily, and books should be open to the place where our names lead. Then step into the temple where Mary, gowned, belled like a Christmas tree angels, speaks with a real one. Their hands negotiate. Mary is asking why light curls to ribbony rainbow on the angel's back, while through her own body it shoots in stiff gold arrows. The angel nods, grins. Nothing more gorgeous than their drapery softened gesticulation, the room's blue propped lilies and plump ottoman. It's enough to make us think they're standing in the world. Two women alert to the heft of their clothes as Mary asks, who, me? Her eyes sliding sideways to her painter, master of distraction. She can't see Jehovah behind her, his one blazing window, but we can. We see the room's whole depth falling into light as we wait for someone not transfixed by dilemma, who's standing where we are, as we wait for Joseph. I don't know about you. I don't know much about that last line, but anyways.
Yeah, I wasn't waiting for you.
I don't get the sense that that's what's on their mind at all at this point. So
Yeah.
Anyway, any thoughts about that painting or this little poem?
It's funny they would think the angel was a woman because angels in the Bible are all men.
Yeah.
Yep. And this one
Oh.
traditionally is a man as well. So yeah.
Gabriel, yes.
Gabriel, yeah. This one reminds me with the cope, as if we're talking about the old order of Melchizedek coming forward, the great priest. So from the Hebrew Testament, then moving toward the incarnation.
Right. And so this painting is full of that kind of illusion as we move from old to new.
One of the things that interested me was the quality of the blue. It's almost indigo, which is a royal color.
Mm-hmm. And that was part of the artist's intention.
Yeah. Coming from a place that produced indigo and shipped it out.
Right.
I think we're waiting for Joseph because Joseph legitimizes the whole thing by being the husband. And as far as the social sort of, he moves the story forward. Because if Mary didn't marry, I don't know if she would have been accepted into the society at all, and Jesus would have been able to carry on.
So she wouldn't have been an unwed mother.
No, I don't know that they would have allowed an unwed mother in at that time. So Joseph was necessary to make the whole thing move along.
Kosher.
The fact that he did not witness this and had to be told it by another angel is a dilemma, as the poet said. A dilemma kind of beyond his experience.
That's for sure. He may have been an important cover for the whole thing, but oh well. What can we say?
He could have been a virgin as well, and that's very complicated how he would have looked at anything.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll move on to a little different time period. This is by Dante, Gabriel, and Rossetti. And the poem or the painting is Ecce Ancilla Domini, Behold the Handmaiden of the Lord. What difference do you notice about Mary and the angel in this painting?
Redheads. Wasn't Rossetti's wife was redheaded, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, Mary looks quite afraid, and the angel's really sort of right there putting it at her. He looks very strong, and this is what you're going to do, and she's kind of, I don't know about that.
Oh,
He's saying, swallow this medicine now.
Just
Yeah.
cringing. Yeah.
The lily is not being offered as a gift to this woman. It's being pointed as a dagger to her womb.
Oh,
That's a good point, Michael. That happens in other paintings too.
Certainly not. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Mhm.
Whereas normal in the other pictures, he was either below or at the same level. And the stole has a lily on it as well, which is interesting because it's but it's got this white lily of purity.
Yeah.
Seems much more vulnerable to me.
mhm.
That body posture of the kind of withdrawing herself into her own womb, she's contracted in fear, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It feels, yeah, she doesn't want to have a look at this guy
Yeah.
at all.
Right.
She looks younger than the others did as well. She is more vulnerable, just kind of a deer in the headlight almost. What's happening to me?
no eye contact.
Yep. Yep.
Well, some dude comes into your bedroom at night. What are you gonna do? Especially if he's woken you up from a sleep.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, she definitely doesn't look all that happy about the whole situation. So now here
Oh, God.
is one of my favorites, Henry Tanner from 1898. This is in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And here, what I love about this is both the posture that Mary takes and how the angel is represented. And this to me looks like what an angel is supposed to look like. This is just me. I don't believe in all the wings things and everything, but this, just pure, terrifying light. I mean, if, in every other story about angels coming, they have to start out saying, don't be afraid, be not afraid, it's okay. We don't get the sense that that's what exactly happened with Mary, but I can see that. Any thoughts or any comments about this one?
She's trying to get closer to a Middle Eastern setting, or what they conceive that to be, a stone floor and a more rustic setting.
Right. And although you can't really read the little sidebar, the note is that the artist had actually just come back from a trip to Egypt and Palestine, and that he is African American, and this he shows Mary portrays her as being younger than most of the others,
Yeah.
and also dresses her in Middle Eastern garb. So, so yeah, there's a certain verisimilitude, although, you know, it's from 19th century, you know, Middle Eastern, but still, I mean, that's what we see.
She's got dark hair.
Mhm.
She's the only one that's been a dark-haired Mary.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't look afraid in this one. She just, as if she's just looking at what this bright light is.
Yeah, she's noticeably not afraid. I think she's curious as to what she sees.
Or interested, yeah.
Yeah.
The setting she's in is very humble as opposed to the others.
Mm-hmm.
She's not reading a book.
No.
Nope. No book. No lily. No dove.
Expression on her face.
Mhm.
That kind of what?
Yep.
Well, and then the light is on her face as well.
She's saying, you woke me up to tell me what?
Now we'll move on to the year 2000. This artist actually painted this, and it's in the North. It's not in a museum at all. It's in a Catholic church in McKinney, Texas, which I think is outside of Dallas. I'm not a Texas. I don't know. My Texas geography is not so good, but this is in the narthex at the church, along with several other paintings that he did of other scenes. But how do you like, you know, this depiction of Mary?
Kind of wimpy.
Oh, I'm so disappointed. I love this.
Yeah. I think it shows Mary as being more the actual age. Like she looks like a child or a young adolescent, and that's probably the age she was.
Yep. She's just come back from school, so reading her book.
Makes me think about all the Christmas pageants and every girl who ever lined up who wanted to be Mary.
To me, she looks like Dorothy of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Interesting where her gaze is directed as opposed to where the the angel's not really looking at her. He's
No.
looking at the lily. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of curious.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of a bit of a power tripping priest. You know, there he is with the power and whatever. I mean, that's probably sounds casting aspersions on Roman Catholicism. I don't mean that, but a particular individual priestly look.
You think because of the pious hands, is that what you're responding to, perhaps?
Yeah, and that muscular of the face, and yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
interesting the way the shadows are falling, because her shadow was behind her, but the shadow of the lily is in front of it, and it's actually putting a shadow onto the angel's robe.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting. What do you make of that?
He has a video too.
Yeah, that's true. There are several interviews of him, and he's commented about this. So maybe you'll look more at this. Who knows? Well, let me move on to the next one.
Can I just say something there?
Oh, of course.
Somehow it seems very significant that the angel is male. And she's very young and vulnerable and
Does it make you anxious?
sorry, did you not hear me?
No, I did. Does
Oh,
that
I'm
make,
sorry.
does that make you anxious?
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Yep, I can see that. So in other words, a little creepy then.
Or just that
Oh,
Mary is being not manipulated, but again, she's this young girl and these powers that are greater than her male are making her or putting her into a situation to work out something. Yeah, it's just like she doesn't have control. There are others more powerful around her who are in control.
It's interesting that that's the first time that a painting has evoked that power over. Because that's not really what we've noticed in Joe's other really beautiful choices.
I think most of the other choices, Mary looks to be about the same age as the angel, except for the previous one where the angel wasn't a human character. The angel was the light.
Mm-hmm.
And in that one, it's not this kind of, there's a creepy guy coming into my bedroom. It's different. It's something more spiritual, for want of a better word. Whereas all the other scenes are of a seemingly male angel and somebody that seems to be about the same age. Whereas this one looks like a young preteen with a very new priest, maybe. He even seems like he's got a collar. So I don't know if that's what but he doesn't seem threatening.
No, I get a sense that he's got more power than she does. There's there's a whole power thing there. And she doesn't have the chance to contemplate. It's just, he's laying it, boom, here. Even though he's looking supplicant, but he's really not.
Yeah. Wow.
I wonder why he thought the angel needed to have wings.
Mm-hmm.
We've had other less representational angels, but this one is very kind of Christmas cardy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If he puts the setting as so contemporary, is it enough for the lily's reflection to be on the gown? Does he, as you would say, does he need the wings for this to be an encounter?
Mm.
But it is in the Catholic Church, and I think there are certain motifs that tend to be followed or things that are so maybe that has something to do with it too.
We've mentioned that the shadow of the lily is falling on the angel, but that also means the angel is casting no shadow, which would, to me, be a further indication that the wings are not really necessary. The girl is throwing a shadow, but the angel is not.
Mm.
It's interesting that it says Mary is portrayed as much like a girl of the 21st century, whereas she's not really. I mean, she looks like she's from the 1950s or something.
The saddle shoes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good point.
So she's modern, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
But not contemporary necessarily.
Yeah, at the time when it would have been painted, still 50 years ahead of that. So.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Hemline's way too.
Where is the dove? I don't see the dove.
It's no dove.
Well, I'm told that
Oh,
the
it says
dove is. It's up
Oh,
on the-
wait,
right
look
there.
on the roof. Yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
looks like a pigeon. Well, I guess it could be a dove.
Turkey. I just
Pheasant, maybe.
Well, that's Texas for you.
There you go. There you go. Well, and if that was Texas, here's Nigeria.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
this one was also done within, I'm not sure exactly when, but it was within the last 20 years. The artist has now passed away, but you can see a number of different points about this one. And you can see the issue about the shoes, the type of ground that Mary is sitting on, and that the angel is kneeling on. That the angel is treating the letter or the announcement as being something very specific from God in the form of a letter or announcement, and the dove is certainly very noticeable there.
Mary has a the angel doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's kind of one.
There seems to be an X on the cheek of the angel too.
Mm-hmm.
understated sexuality is that the angel is without any potency or whatever, because the ground underneath him is desert, and underneath Mary there's fertility. So that's kind of symbolic for the artist.
She's a very substantial persona in this. Immediately, she radiates. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really get the sense that she is more in control than in any of the others paintings that I can think of, and he's supplicating and she's really in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Reminded of the evangelical churches where, there's a signifying hand that's, or when somebody's preaching, there's a hand that goes up in affirmation and reaching toward God. It's really very powerful here.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The artist has put in a very intentional halo above her head, but really the white and the red behind her head give that effect on their own.
mhm.
The angel has a little bit of that with the white, but clearly much less defined as around the woman.
And then here's the last one, I think. Yeah. So this one is from a Chinese American artist. This is from 2013. And this guy has actually exhibited in Jacksonville for, he had a show here, and it came and talked about his art, and he's a very interesting fellow. So I wanted to put him in here as well. Although, as the notes say, Mary is holding a long sticker tube, and people haven't been able to quite figure out what that is. So maybe you've got an idea what that might be.
It's a musical instrument.
Right.
Our fingers are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mary's song. We're going to hear the Magnificat
Mhm.
Yeah.
as her response to what's next.
Mm-hmm. And like I say, if you are interested in some of the artist commentaries or other commentaries, you'll see that there's some little notes down here at the bottom of several of these things. There's one, so that's my very short selection of art pieces about the Annunciation. There are several poems that I could share with you, but our time is getting close, and there's really one that I want to particularly share. And it's not by Rilke, although Rilke is normally a great poet. But the poem that I'm interested in is by Denise Levertov.
Yeah.
And I would love it if somebody would be willing to read this. I think it would be great to have a voice different from mine. You've heard enough of me tonight.
I'll read it.
Please.
We know the scene, the room, variously furnished, almost always a lectern, a book, always the tall lily. Arrived in sudden grandeur of great wings, the angelic ambassador, standing or hovering, whom she acknowledges as a guest. But we are told of meek obedience. No one mentions courage. The engendered spirit did not enter her without consent. God waited. She was free to accept or to refuse, choice integral to humanness. Aren't there annunciations of one sort or another in most lives? Some unwillingly undertake great destinies, enact them in sullen pride, uncomprehending. More often, those moments when light and storm, open from darkness in a man or woman, are turned away from, in dread, in a wave of weakness, in despair, and in relief. Ordinary lives continue. God does not smite them, but the gates close, the pathway vanishes. She had been a child who played, ate, slept like any other child, but unlike others, wept only for pity, laughed in joy, not triumph. Compassion and intelligence fused in her, indivisible. Called to a destiny more momentous than any in all of time, she did not quail, only asked a simple, "How can this be?" and gravely, courteously took to heart the angel's reply, the astounding ministry she was offered. To bear in her womb infinite weight and lightness, to carry in hidden finite inwardness 9 months of eternity, to contain in a slender vase of being the sum of power, in narrow flesh the sum of light, then bring to birth, push out into air a man-child, needing, like any other, milk and love, but who was God. There was a moment no one speaks of where she could still refuse. A breath unbreathed, spirit suspended, waiting. She did not cry, "I cannot, I am not worthy," nor "I have not the strength." She did not submit with gritted teeth, raging, coerced. Bravest of all humans, consent illumined her. The room filled with its light, the lily glowed in it, and the iridescent wings. Consent, courage unparalleled, opened her utterly.
Thank you very much. Any comments? You know, I've always wondered and thought this very point. I wonder how many young women the angels visited before Mary said, "Okay." We don't read about them because, as the poem says, well, God does not smite them, but the gates close, the pathway vanishes. This to me is a wonderful poem about human choice and human freedom, and yet the interaction and relationship between God almost every day with us. I mean, I think that we have all annunciations probably every day, if we just looked around for them, and opened our eyes and our ears. Anyway, that's my thought. What do y'all think?
Love the phrase consent illumined her. I say, you know, I think when like you, Joe, whenever we notice, whenever we're paying attention, whenever we're deep in prayer or in encounter in relationship, whatever, there's light there from beyond us. And we consent to that.
And I think all of the paintings and the poems that we've looked at, they all look at this idea of her consent, which at the time would have been very unusual. I mean, I don't imagine a lot of young girls who were told what was going to happen were given the opportunity to say, yes, I want this, or no, I don't. Whereas it doesn't seem anywhere where she wasn't asked. Every incidence that seems to be out there is her being asked by God to do this and her saying, yes, I will, as opposed to God saying, this is what's going to happen. And I think that's a really important point.
Thank you. I agree. I totally agree. Any others?
I think for us, we are not predestined either. We are able to refuse God's call or to, to ask for something different or whatever. I mean, the call comes to us and we are still free to accept or refuse. We have the free will. I think it's part of what she's saying.
Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
That we have free will?
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Michael, of course, just gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago on John Calvin. So,
Sorry?
We have this Sunday morning thing called Faith Forum, and Michael just presented on the lesser feasts and fasts kind of thing, that the calendar of lesser saints, I guess and John Calvin was on the list. So he's the one who helped us with predestination, no consent.
yeah. Well, anyway, I'll leave that. There are several other poems that I hope you will read. The one by Marie Howe is splendid, although you're never even going to see the name Mary in there, or angels or anything. Nevertheless, it's very, very appropriate for this topic. I tell you what, we probably have 30 seconds left, and so I would love for somebody to read this poem. I just love this poem. I think it is so interesting. Would somebody be willing to do that?
I can read it.
Okay, thank you.
Girls overheard while assembling a puzzle. Are you sure this blue is the same as the blue over there? This wall's like the bottom of a pool. Its color, I mean. I need a darker two-piece this summer, the kind with elastic at the waist so it actually fits. I can't find her hands. Where does this gold go? It's like the angels giving her a piece of honeycomb to eat. I don't see why God doesn't just come down and kiss her himself. This is the red of that saw at the mall. This piece of her neck could fit into the light part of the sky. I think this is a piece of water. What kind of queen? You mean right here? And are we supposed to believe she can suddenly talk angel? Who thought this stuff up? I wish I had a velvet bikini. That flower's the color of the veins in my grandmother's hands. I wish we could walk into that garden and pick an x-ray to float on. Yeah, I do too. I'd say a zillion yeses to anyone for that.
Well, that's gonna be the last of the poems that we're gonna read tonight, at least together. Any comments or thoughts about that? I just think it's wonderful. This poet has written a whole book called Incarnadine, which is about the incarnation, but it's from the point of view of contemporary people. And this one I just think is so wonderful because, trying to understand much of our religion, particularly the incarnation, is really like putting a puzzle together. So any other thoughts? I know you probably want to move on and do other things.
I just really appreciate the way that Edith read it, because I really could hear the stream of consciousness of a conversation among girls doing a project together.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like the idea
Dog
of God
agrees,
coming
yeah.
down to kiss her himself.
Like
Well,
the whimsy of the spirit moving through a very serious subject with a breath of air. So thank you, Joe. That's great.
Yeah.
Joe.
Thank you.
Nice
Well,
to
you're
meet you.
welcome. You've got other things there. Like I say, there are other things than the Annunciation in Mary's life, but and then there are also a question about whether you like Thomas Merton as much as a poet as you do as a writer and mystic and all that. But I appreciate your attention. I appreciate your readings. I appreciate all your comments. So just thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing Linda lead us next week on, is it the Hebrew women talk to St. Paul?
Yeah, they don't give their consent. So let me just talk about that. And contemporary poet David Kinloch out of Glasgow. And we'll focus on some of the poly material, mostly the stuff where he talks about or on behalf of or makes decisions for women, and yet that there is counter evidence in opposition to what we have recorded. So I think it should be interesting too. Not as lively as this, though, I don't think.
I had spoken
I
about
think
William
it'll be
Kurelic.
lively.
I had spoken about William Kurelic and his contemporary making the birth in a time and place that we know. I'll just show you one picture, if you can see that. This is Jesus born during a cattle drive in the feed
Be
shed.
back on full screen.
Yeah, that's what I was getting ready to. Oops, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Okay. Okay, let's see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's born in a fishing boat. He's born in a boxcar. His parents are riding the rails because they're refugees.
Oh,
They're all, it's called a northern nativity. He's born in a snow house. So they're all northern, and they're all scenes of not the Annunciation, but the Incarnation. But it's a wonderful collection. He's even born looking across to Parliament Hill, people from Ottawa, kind of isolated and wondering if anybody notices that he's being born in Ottawa. Anyhow.
Well, actually, Gatineau. He's being born in Gatineau, Patricia.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got that
Kurelic-
book at the church.
Kurelic's point seems to be that nobody's noticing, and that's another piece. We don't notice other people's annunciations, maybe, because they're private. I don't know. It's just a last thought.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That sounds very Bruegel and Bruegel, it sounds like, yeah.
Well,
As you say.
it's 1976, so it's not so easy to find, but you might find it in a secondhand.
Ambulance.
And Chambliss, that's right.
Yeah,
There you go.
Get down to Chambliss.
Sounds like a plan. Well, guys, it's a little after 8:30, so thank you for everything. And like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing Linda next week.